On behalf of the Chanakya Dialogues, I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Krishna Verma, and I'm going to be the host for the day ahead. The Chanakya Dialogues is an initiative to move beyond e-dialogue and bring together some of India's finest minds to ideate on issues that have been part of the strategic discourse of this nation. What are the issues that concern us? What are the solutions that elude us? What are the problems that remain unsolved? The Chanakya Dialogues is an maiden attempt by Chanakya Forum to bring strategic discourse to the public. We are recording each keynote speech today. Without much ado, I invite Major Gaurav Arya, Editor-in-Chief of Chanakya Forum, to deliver the welcome address.
Jai Hind, ladies and gentlemen, and I start off by thanking each and every one of you for being here, taking out your precious time. The aim behind Chanakya Dialogues is simple. We at Chanakya Forum feel that for a very, very long time, strategic discourse in this country has been within a few. It needs to go out there in the public. And today we have some of India's finest minds who are going to speak on strategy, on geopolitics and foreign affairs. These are humble beginnings. So far, the Chanakya Dialogues was a small YouTube channel. Today, our aspirations take wing. Today, we have a gathering of a few, but some of the most brilliant minds in the field of military strategy, in the field of geopolitics and foreign affairs that this nation has produced. It is my honor and privilege to welcome all of you on behalf of Chanakya Forum. Chanakya Dialogues aims to go from step to step, one level to the other. We hope to have this discourse quarterly. We're looking to have this next discourse in the month of December or January. We will keep on inviting people, we'll keep on inviting the brightest minds to share their wisdom from the rest of us. And today, before I hand over the stage to the next speaker, there is a small anecdote which I'd like to share with you. It was on Army Day that I was recording Blitzkrieg, a show that I used to do with General Atta Hasnain. And General Hasnain told me, he says, Gaurav, today on Army Day, I'm wearing the army tie. Which tie are you wearing? I was a little confused at that time. I didn't know what a tie had to do with a good show. But then I thought about it and I realized that it is the minor things that are important. To show a sense of belonging, to show a sense of detail, and to show that you truly think about that moment. Which is why today, I'm wearing the tie of my alma mater. I'm wearing the OTA tie. This is to tell you, in a small measure, that I come here today as a student. I come here to learn from the masters. Thank you very much once again. And I hand over the mic to the MC for this event to start. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Our first keynote speaker is a name that needs no introduction. Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain is former GOC 15 Corps and currently Chancellor, Central University of Kashmir. General Hasnain is a widely respected analyst and is known as a scholar warrior in the Indian Army. A prolific writer, he writes for many respected publications including Chanakya Forum. His views on geopolitics and national security are widely read and discussed. Today, he will speak on strategic communication, tomorrow's war. While we have developed kinetic capabilities, strategic communication is where we lack. How do we communicate our intent and our capabilities? Is there more to strategic communication than simply conveying our intent and aim? Please welcome Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain. So,
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. Jai Hind to everyone. This on? Yeah. Jai Hind, everyone. And compliments, congratulations, Gaurav, on your first program of what promises to be a very long journey of some outstanding strategic discussions that we are likely to undertake. I'm standing here in front of people who are senior to me, have been my mentors, my commanders, and therefore, let me start by first of all paying obeisance to them, because the Indian system is very clear. The Guru-Shikshak relationship is very, very important. I want to acknowledge the presence here of General Mukesh Sabharwal, my former co-commander, who should also be on the panel on Kashmir. My pleasure to be actually interrogating him today on Kashmir. Much against all advice, everyone normally perceives that the best way to speak is always to speak off the cuff. Unfortunately, the subject which has been given to me in the morning today is a subject which not too many people are familiar with. And in India, it is a subject which has been wanting attention for a very, very long time. So therefore, I am not going to speak off the cuff, nor am I going to speak, I'm going to speak primarily from a script, because I've got a timer right here and a minute and a half has already elapsed, right? So we're going to be talking about strategic communication. In the last 10 years or so, the number of times I have spoken on the need for a policy on strategic communication, along with a coordinated capability for India, actually surpasses the number of times that I've spoken on the subject, my favorite subject, the subject of Kashmir. Yesterday was the 5th of August, third anniversary of the abrogation or the amendment of Article 370. I got a call from relevant quarters that Pakistan was launching an information blitzkrieg. And I was sent a lot of material of what is going to appear in the media. It did launch that blitzkrieg yesterday. And we in India did not have a cogent initiative to counter it. Although we were discussing it in the last 72 hours, we were discussing it as to what can we really do, but we could not do very much except for sporadic outbursts on Twitter and things like that. There was no cogent policy on it. Pakistan's information was slick, case by case, depicting HR violations, economic costs of state terror, internet shutdowns, and mental health issues such as this on Kashmir. These are issues which can be turned back on Pakistan at any time if we have a cogent policy ourselves. We have not thought through and depend too much on a single dimension of information or information warfare, that is the military. We think the only organization and agency which can undertake this responsibility is the Indian Army. We have tried our best, we have gone up to a level, but I think we have plateaued there. The nation does not have to only safeguard its borders, its territories, and its physical assets, but also its people, who are the prime objects of psychological targeting. These people are subject to all kinds of influences in the phenomenon which is called grey zone war today, the blurred zone lying between war and peace. It's not just a question of short-term efforts by our adversaries to influence the minds of our people, who remain vulnerable to alien ideologies, narratives, and thought processes, but equally the nation's partners and international institutions with whom the nation works. Which means internationally, all the nations that we cooperate with, even they are targeted by our adversaries on the issue of the linkages with India. It's also much to do with internal resilience and divisiveness in a nation so heterogeneous as ours, and with existing fault lines which remain open always for exploitation. It's always good to remember that India's neighborhood has two nations who have attempted to weaponize information and communication like nobody else before. Pakistan realized very early that contesting India in purely the military domain would be a very difficult proposition. It therefore set up the Inter-Services Public Relations Wing, or what is called the ISPR, as early as 1949. Very few people are aware. The ISI is very, very well known to everyone, but the ISPR is hardly known to any people. And this gave substance to the weaponization of information. In each war that it fought, it tried hard to influence the people of Jammu and Kashmir to rise up in rebellion. If you remember 1947-48, 1965, again, the whole intent was to get an uprising, take over the radio station, the fledgling television station, and announce to the world that Kashmir had been liberated. Thereafter, it has dominated the communication domain with a concept of offensive narratives taken directly and indirectly to the concerned objectives. China was one of the first to visualize the scope of the effects of the information revolution in the wake of the CNN blitzkrieg during the first Gulf War in 1990. By 1993, 3 years later, it had conceptualized its strategy through a doctrine called war under informationized conditions. It finally led to the much discussed three warfare strategy: cyber, media, legal, which formed the crux of the doctrine of non-contact warfare. India realized the effect of strategic communication which it was being targeted with. Yet it could not translate a response into a doctrine of strategy or a strategy. In 2004, it raised an information warfare brigade in Kashmir. John Sabharwal was then the GOC of 28 Div, I think at that time. I was commanding the Uri brigade at that particular time. And shortly thereafter, we converted it to some other resource of the Army Corps of Signals without nary a thought to the ideas that they were building up at that particular time. The Indian Army in Jammu and Kashmir, which was subjected to the strategy of competing narratives through the then existing means of media, struggled intellectually and made the flawed assumption, and I say that again, we made a flawed assumption that our military civic action program, Operation Sadbhavna, an otherwise very, very highly successful scheme, was the right response to Pakistan's strategic communication strategy. It couldn't work. Obviously, it was a bricks and mortar kind of a campaign which we were launching in Sadbhavna, and here everything had to be looked at the cognitive domain. The MCA program, or what is called Military Civic Action Program, never allowed us to reach out to the people with the express purpose of communication, countering narratives and initiating some of our own narratives. By 2011, when social media reach had penetrated all over the country, I was one of those who had been reading and imbibing a lot on experiences of different nations and armies. I found that most had a national security strategy, guiding the entire effort towards outreach to the objectives. In the absence of such a strategy in India, a cogent outreach to the people in areas beyond the country, around the country, wherever there were anti-national feelings, could not be achieved. The nascent efforts made by some of us fell short because of the lack of insufficient research backing, and the non-availability of text to us. This is when I realized that this game is so much deeper, needs more professionalism, and cannot be sustained without academic backing. Strategic communication needs all this and much more. Moreover, it's a domain which cannot be pursued by people on 2 to 3 year postings, and particularly people who are looking for command reports, looking for their accommodation in Delhi for a period after 1.5 years. No, this has to be a passion, which has to be a sustained effort. This needs a professionalization of its own. It needs mass communication specialists and not improvised, what I call Fauji Jugaad. The problem is that Faujis understand the security need, but know nothing about professional communication. Very little about professional communication. The Information and Broadcasting Ministry, which is the information branch of the Government of India, are outstanding. Their personnel are outstanding communication professionals with no idea of national security paradigm. Now you got a very strange situation, a set of armed forces people who know what has to be conveyed but don't know how to convey it. And on the other hand, you have the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting who have no idea what security is but know how to convey it. How do you bridge this gap? That is the whole idea. This is the tragedy which has existed all these years, much like the domain of disaster management, the subject which I am involved in today, which till 2005 remained an agricultural ministry responsibility. Can you imagine the agriculture ministry handling glacial outbursts today? the type which happened in Chamoli or the kind of landslide which has just happened in Manipur. The realization came, in the case of disaster management, came after the Odisha superstorm and the Gujarat earthquake, which cemented finally by the tsunami of 2004. And the NDMA, the NIDM, the NDRF were all set up after it was realized. So how do we go about resolving this serious challenge of no concept, no doctrine, no guideline for communication strategy in India? That's the crux of this whole talk. In 2020, after many years, I returned to the government. Very strange, 7 years after you retire, you go back to the government. Just before the coronavirus pandemic, the government experimented with one of its best administrative innovations. This government, you got to give it to them. They had this particular innovation, the creation of empowered groups, or what are called EGs, for different domains of government of governance to cover the essential responses to the coronavirus pandemic. Most people are unaware of this completely. With each one ministry made as the core organization of that empowered group. So it was one of the finest administrative structures for integrated governance. Not much has been realized about this and not much has been written about it. By a stroke of good fortune, I was nominated to one empowered group which dealt with strategic communication during COVID times. It's nothing to do with war, nothing to do with CICT operations, but COVID. The empowered group comprised senior officials from the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, selected NGOs, and members of corporate organizations such as FICCI. One of the biggest challenges before this empowered group was the creation of a positive environment for the vaccination rollout. You remember the kind of resistance which was taking place at that time. And popularizing the basic countermeasures for the vaccination rollout itself, and popularizing the basic countermeasures such as hand washing, social distancing, and wearing of masks. These three issues, if you remember, there was a campaign which went viral. The long and short of this experience is that I came away with the perception that the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting's capability and efficiency in the creation of tools of communication is absolutely masterly and completely unknown to important ministries such as the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Culture, and perhaps even the Ministry of Home. The MIB, or the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, has the wherewithal and the larger understanding to work with concerned ministries to execute their strategic communication and outreach plans. All you need to take them on board, make them understand. The MOD could do a lot of quality work with the MIB, and the integrated approach could work wonders in proxy conflict zones. The problem is to give each other a bit of orientation about the other's capabilities. It's not just internal security, but a lot to do with diplomacy too. Why must the MEA remain on its own? I was in Iran in 2019 after this event of 5th of August. The Indian embassy asked me to help it to counter the Pakistani propaganda in Iranian media. They had no idea about what Jammu and Kashmir is. Their issues of J&K, as far as the embassy was concerned, they didn't have the capability to counter the propaganda which had been put out by the ISI. I worked for 2 days to do this with them. Pakistan's presence is always ensured at all important international think tanks and capital cities, doing exactly what the ISPR is very good at. Israel, the Herzliya Summit, a place where Pakistan should never find a place at all because they don't even have diplomatic relations with Israel. But even there, I still remember, and I love recounting this, that at the breakfast table in the morning, I found 3 Pakistani intellectuals joining me for breakfast. And they were there speaking at the forum. So it does not end there. Experiencing the functioning of institutions such as the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, of which I am a part, or the UGC, one can appreciate the need for an authority working in sync with the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. Such a body which could be treated as a super think tank beyond the scope and purview of the National Security Advisory Board. It could take in members from different domains of government to include diplomats, generals and admirals and air marshals, along with intelligence and police officials, legal luminaries, corporate people, academics, all kinds of people. The body hypothetically could be given the title of National Strategic Communication Authority, or NSCA, and would have several mass communication specialists who would be a part of it. Its responsibility would be to monitor the intelligence situation, the leanings in conflict zones, the direction of events, and also evolve themes to be executed, along with guidelines and plans in place for the rollout. It would task various ministries through the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, or retain the autonomy to do that itself. There can be strategic long-term plans which could be evolved. Sub-offices of this could be formed in regions and states to take in local inputs required to play the narratives regionally. The central body would, of course, do the guidance from time to time and evolve national level campaigns which could then be run over a period of time through the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. These are some of the top of the head ideas put together through observation and experience. At the end, may I just say, my experience with the MIB showed me that if I had a thought process, if I had an idea which I wanted to express and put it out into the public, if I was doing this in the army, it would have taken me a couple of days to do it. Well, I didn't have the tools. I wouldn't know what the tools are. I wouldn't have the backup for it. In the MIB, at 6 o'clock in the evening, an idea on the coronavirus pandemic could be in the public domain at 6 o'clock next morning. In 12 hours' time, they had the capability to put together creatives, all kinds of communication tools, and put this across to the public. So this proposal has been received with great interest wherever it has been discussed. Pakistan is, of course, elated with it. That is, institutions like the ISPR are being taken note of and possibly even replicated. You may remember the ISPR put me on his cover on one of his magazines and said, General Hasnain from the Indian Army has said we are the most efficient information organization of the world. It's time we stepped out into the cold and considered strategic communication as one of the domains which could make a great difference to bring a long-term change in the way people perceive security issues around the nation, and especially in conflict zones. Gaurav, your idea of the Chanakya dialogues is actually a subset of communication strategy. Nothing more. And I compliment you for that. Thank you very much. I end there.
Sir, I request you to be here for a while. Any questions? We have time for 2 questions. Sir is here. Anybody? Yeah.
So I'm Ajay Floria. My question is, sir, you mentioned about the strategic communication within the country. Incorporating MIB and the structure that you brought out is very good for the country, sir. When we want to pass a message or a strategic communication within the country, what about communication outside the country? Maybe in the adversarial countries, or maybe with the friendly foreign countries.
Thank you. Your question is very valid. I did refer to it, but let me expand on this a wee bit. 2 examples I gave you of Iran, for example, which is a place where the ISI plays all its games. The Middle East, most of the Gulf country, capitals of the Gulf countries, the ISI plays its games. It plays its games at all major national capitals of the world, from Sydney, Singapore, Hong Kong, stretching up to New York, right? Now, the MEA, very, very proficient, very efficient organization, but probably doesn't have the measure of understanding of so many of the internal issues of India, right? Which need to be put together and worked out as a campaign to put it out across. For example, on the 5th of August, yesterday, we should have had a campaign going out. Let me tell you a very, very basic thing. In Tehran, the narrative put out by the Pakistan ISI was the UN resolution has not been adhered to by the government of India. Nowhere was it mentioned that the Shimla Agreement in 1972, Pakistan is a signatory to it, and that the UN resolution is no longer valid. We had not put this out anywhere. No one was talking about this in the world anyway. The Pakistani narrative of India not adhering to the UN resolution was the one which was gaining traction. Now, therefore, for this, I don't blame the MEA. The MEA makes great efforts, right? But if you have an authority, if you've got some organization which is doing the backroom work for you, right? I can explain this in a little better way. When we tried this in 15 Corps headquarters, let me tell you, when the social media came in 2011, I thought it's a very simple game. Let's put together a few narratives and start spreading this out through fake IDs and things like that. On the 3rd day, my person in charge came to me and said, sir, what else do we do? Third day, he had run out of ideas. We had no backup. We had no research work. We had no idea of what narratives we can play. This is exactly what is required. So you need a think tank. You need a think tank approach. You need communication capability. And you need different channels by which you can keep putting this out. Internationally, this can be done. One of my strongest recommendations has always been that the veteran community, I mean, this is the kind of talent that you have present in this room. Why should we waste this? This is the community which should be roaming around different capitals of the world, participating in every identified webinar, seminar which is taking place. This is why you find the Pakistani presence there. And that is why the ISPR has gone places where it has. I hope I've answered your question. Please.
Isn't strategic communication a subset of larger ambit of cognitive warfare or cognition warfare? And MIB becomes just a conduit. It's a medium. It's not a thinking agency, and they are incapable of actually having 20 years perspective on cognitive warfare, which takes that issues will take 20 years or maybe longer. Then it may be all right to have the thinking agency which thinks the cognitive warfare, which is a long-term perspective, to be a subset of the NSCS or something, which actually tasks the organizations like the MEA or the RAW. To answer your question, RAW takes on strategic communication outside India in a dedicated manner. They run newspapers, I mean, or maybe other issues also. So then there has to be a communication which has to be started from Ministry of Defense or External Affairs or Culture or Environment or Climate Change or whatever you said, has to be done by one masterly agency. Then masterly agency should be handled by a master who has the capacity to do so. MIB, I think, sir, though despite that your relationship...
I think you got me wrong on one issue. The MIB is the tool, the communication tool.
So,
What I spoke about was the National Communication Strategic Authority. That is the think tank.
so that...
I'm working perhaps under the NSAB. Whatever.
Yeah, maybe that better ideas.
I mean, your thought process is absolutely
and
in
not
sync with
strategic
mine.
communication, because strategic communication is today, tomorrow, day after. But cognitive warfare is what to be spoken as a larger issue.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.